Hey guys, welcome to another end of the year video. I have a playlist going in the cards. We got best fantasy, sci-fi, audiobooks, short story collection. We do have some disappointments, and this one is my top 10 young adult books. This is all young adult, SFF, contemporary, all of it. And I don't read young adult a lot, but I do read a few, and there were definitely a lot on this list that I really loved. And so I wanted to share that list with you in case you're someone who does like young adult, but like me, likes to cherry pick what you pick out because time is short. Number 10 is We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faizal, and this is the first book in a duology. The second book comes out in January, I think, and I'm very excited. This is a young adult fantasy that's Middle Eastern, kind of desert fantasy, which I like that setting a lot. So the world building was actually really interesting to me. It does use some language that might be hard to digest in the audio format, but for me physically reading, the context clues are very clear. And you follow this woman who usually had to hunt for her family and then has to go basically on this journey for a thing because of her magical abilities, because this is a land kind of without magic now, I think. And the companions she meets and kind of this whole, there's a dark prince trope. I love a dark prince, like a lot. It was just really fun, so I'm excited to meet these characters again in the second one because there was a cliffhanger at the end of We Hunt the Flame. But yeah, so in terms of like, this is like probably the closest to like what I used to read in traditional YA fantasy, but it has a very unique, fun setting. And I thought these characters were pretty interesting. I think some people find the beginning kind of slow because it's a little slice of lifey for a while, but I really liked that part. And then it kind of switches into kind of like a quest story pretty quick, which I know I'm not always big on, but in this case, I felt there was enough character banter and interaction that it really worked. And I really liked the tropes and the romance, so yeah. I like We Hunt the Flames. I cannot wait for, I think it's We Free the Stars that comes out in 2021. Number 9 is the first book in the Renegades trilogy called Renegades by Marissa Myers. I read this because when I first started my channel, someone recommended it to me. I think it was Katie, and I'm really glad she did because I read this entire trilogy and really liked it. This is basically a world where people can have superpowers and there are villains and renegades. And so if you are someone with superpowers who works for the renegades, you're the good guys. And if you decide not to, you're a villain. And it's kind of a post-apocalyptic-ish world because stuff had happened. Like there was this big war between the villains and the renegades sort of thing. And now it's all being brought together. And I really like that. And we follow two characters. Oh, I think Nova and Adrian are their names. I'm not very good at remembering things, and this was like 9 months ago. But Nova is very much like a villain type, and Adrian is a renegade, and they both also have their own secrets though, and they both have their own motivations, and you follow them in this world. And I really liked the first book. I thought it was a pretty fun introduction to this type of story. Number 8 is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. I read this fall. I'll actually link the vlog in which I freak out about how adorable it is. This is about Yadriel who wants to prove to his family that he is a true Brujo because Yadriel's trans. So his family finds it hard to reconcile his gender at birth versus his actual gender, and that is related to the magic system. So they don't believe that their magical entity will recognize Yadriel as a boy. And this is a big point of contention for him. He just wants to be a part of his family traditions in the way that feels right. And so in the process, he actually summons the wrong ghost because that's a part of the Brujo powers. And Julian is amazing and their banter is awesome. And yeah, that's all I'll say. It's really great. It's perfect for October times. I mean, it's perfect any time of year, but if you want a seasonal, like Halloween, early November book, like that's the book that's going to get you in the mood, especially if you are like a person who celebrates Dia de los Muertos. Like it was giving me all those vibes. Number 7 is actually the third book in the Renegades trilogy, Supernova. I thought this was a great finale. I devoured the end of this book. So there is a second book in Renegades. It's not on this list. I didn't like Arch Enemies. I think this series should have been a duology. The middle book has so much middle book syndrome, like it's worth getting through because Supernova is crazy. Finally, secrets are revealed and like, it's just, I mean, some of it's very predictable, but like it feels so awesome. And like the ending, I just had a really fun time with the conclusion to this trilogy. I also find that I like more sci-fi young adult than I do fantasy, so this was like a nice taste of it. It also was everything I wanted the Reckoners trilogy by Brandon Sanderson to be, which like I don't like. Like I love Brandon Sanderson, and I don't like the Reckoners. So I think that was another part of it. It's like I wanted that young adult superhero series that I was promised from Sanderson, and I kind of found it here. So that's part of why both of those are on this list. Number 6 is Clap With You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is the story of two girls who find out they're sisters because their father passes away in a plane accident. And it's a really great discussion about grief and how you can both be mad and love someone you lost, and also just how you rearrange your orientation with the universe with this new information. What's also really interesting is one of the girls is living in New York City and the other one's living in the DR. And so they're both Dominican, but one's from the diaspora and one's a native to the island. And so that has some really interesting conversations. I did listen to this on audiobook, and I thought that was perfect because this is in verse. And I just feel like the intention of the phrasing was portrayed so well in the audiobook that I couldn't have done it justice in my own brain. So that's how I'd recommend it. But it was a really touching story. It didn't make me cry personally, but I have like I always say, I have like no emotions when I read. You want to make me cry, make me watch Come From Away or something like that. It's a very good musical, by the way. But that's number 6. Number 5 is Scythe by Neal Shusterman. This is the first book in the arc of a Scythe trilogy. It's not a very good trilogy name, in my opinion. But I really loved this first book in this kind of like utopia, dystopian YA thing. It was a refreshing take on that kind of genre. Unfortunately, for me, still the best of the trilogy. I feel like that happens to me with every single one of these types of books. Is like the first one, it lands because the concepts are so cool, and then the other ones like don't know what to do with that. If that makes sense. Not that this trilogy was bad, but like I had some issues with how it ended. But this first one was super solid and kind of can be more of a complete thought if you did want to stop after it, I think. But you also will kind of want to keep going. But the world is so interesting. You're following these apprentices trying to become a scythe, which scythes are people who basically cull humanity because humanity doesn't die anymore. It's run by an AI who makes sure everyone can live and have jobs, but to make sure the population doesn't overpopulate, there are scythes who kill humans because the AI is not allowed to kill or affect birth. And so they need new scythes once in a while, so a scythe basically acquired apprentices, and we follow that trajectory. And I don't know if it's thematically very like deep or anything, but it was really fun. So I really enjoyed that one. Number 4 is Incendiary, and this is the first book, and I don't know if it's a trilogy or not. Could be a duology, but the second book comes out in May, and I am so ready. I loved this. This is, again, kind of like We Hunt the Flames, like kind of the most similar to my typical young adult fantasy, but with the tropes I love, and it was so good. You have Ren, who is kind of this, she's a woman who was at a young age used for her powers, which is like memory snatching, essentially. She can take someone's memory and then they don't have it anymore. And she can do this to an extent to actually basically make someone like a ghoul, or basically doesn't have any personality anymore, sort of type of empty person. And she's now on the side of the rebels, though, because in this world, we have people with powers called the Moria, and you've got the kingdom. And the kingdom has decided all Moria are enemies. So the rebels are just the Moria who are just trying to exist, and they have like 4 different types of powers that are pretty cool. And so after being saved, she's a part of the Moria, but the Moria still don't trust her, and this is always this tension. And this book was awesome. I really liked the pacing of this book. The first third is just breakneck, so much stress. And the second one is kind of like you get to breathe, it's calm, we kind of have this like we're getting to know some things, we're learning, it's fine. And then the end is like, again. And we have laid down the tracks for some of my favorite tropes, and I'm really hoping. So it's interesting because I haven't like been shipping people in young adult books in so long, but this book brings it out of me. I really like it. Number 3 is Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. I love this book. I also recommend it on audio. I do have a review for it. It's so quality. This is a story about Jam, who one day accidentally summons Pet, who is a monster hunter. Now, this is the island of Lucille, which shouldn't have monsters anymore. Essentially, it's that type of utopia. And Pet basically says, no, there's a monster. And normally a monster doesn't refer to an actual creature. It refers to something like domestic abuse or basically just something bad in the community happening. And so she's being told that her best friend is in danger of a monster and she has to figure this out. And it's such a great story. It feels like a story for all ages, honestly. Like, yes, it's technically coming of age young adult, but I enjoyed it so much as an adult. Thematically, the writing is beautiful and rich, but it also kind of feels like it could almost be a middle grade if it weren't for the age of the character, and like some of the themes are a little heavy, so you'd have to really know your middle grader and have conversations with them. But I loved it, and I highly recommend it, physically reading or audiobook. It's really solid. Number 2 is Dark and Deepest Red by Anna Marie McLemore. I loved this story. I read this story in 2 days. I don't read books that quick. It's not who I am, but I just kept wanting to pick it up. And it's not particularly plot driven. This is a story of 2 timelines. You've got the French timeline and you got present day and I think Texas. And in both timelines, you have basically minority people trying to get by. So in the present day, we've got our main character. I think her name's Rosella. It's been a really long time. And by a long time, I mean 4 months, so whatever. But she is Mexican-American. At her school, her family sells these really great shoes. And basically, this land kind of has some light magic. And one time of year, magic happens. And this year, it happens to be that everyone gets these red shoes and their life's awesome. But she didn't get any shoes, so she made her own. But she can't take the shoes off, and she's really scared about what happens because the shoes keep making her dance. She also has a friend who is Romani, and kind of has these loose connections to this past timeline. Now, in this past timeline, it's based off the dancing plagues that used to happen in France. And we have this Romani family and this trans person, I think it's a trans man, who are all living together and trying to pass as Italian in this village so that they won't be called out, because this is a time period where there's a lot of prejudice against Romani people. And you're kind of following this story because as the dancing plague happens, they start to get blamed and like what's happening there and the parallels to what's happening with Rosella. And it's really great, and it's just one of my favorite ways to read a coming-of-age story. It was so lyrical and lush, and I loved it. It reminded me of the writing of Catherine Arden, if that's an author you like. Like, it was just so lush. Like, I just fell into the atmosphere of this story, and that doesn't happen to me very often, and it was just really great. Number 1 is Catfishing on Catnet. I have a review for this. You all need to read this book. It's so good. I love Catfishing on Catnet. Chaos on the Net comes out this year, I think in April. Yeah, I'm very excited. So this is the story of a girl and her mom who are always running away from her abusive father. And so that means they switch towns a lot, so she really only has friends on Catnet, which is this website run by this AI who is so awesome. So we have our AI character and we have our main female character. And this female character is just trying to get by at her new school, which is just like pretty classic setup. But it becomes a thriller so quick, and it's so funny and wholesome and thrilling. Like, I don't know how it combines all these things in a pot, but it is very suspenseful and thrilling. It's very wholesome and it's very funny, and I really, really love it. And I have just a pure gushing review up in the cards if you want to see that, but Kayla read recently the sequel, and she was the one I buddy read this with originally, and she said it's really good, so I am pumped. This low-key became an anticipated releases video, I realized about halfway through, but here it is. These were my top 10 young adult books of 2020. Based off these, if you have any recommendations for me, feel free to put them down in the description. I'd love to hear it. I don't read it as much, like I said, but I do love finding the ones that really resonate with me. I already kind of know one of the ones that'll probably be on next year's list. If you know, you know. But otherwise, in the description, you can leave a pair of red shoes, or like the dancing red woman for Dark and Deepest Red in the description. Or you can leave a smiley face, like I said. It always brings me joy just to see you guys there. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.